and then 5. In the array, the elements are filled from left to right. So we are filling them from left to right. So at the end, as you can see, 5 is the topmost element. And this index T over here is representing the index that is actually the topmost element. So if you want to call the top over here, because T is 2, so you will actually be able to get the element at the top, that is 5. But what if you want to now call a pop? So what does pop do? The pop will do this, that you will simply see what the pop is doing. It's checking if the stack is empty, so you cannot pop from an empty stack. But any other case, what you're doing is you're simply decrementing T. That means that currently, if a pop is called over here in my stack, all I have to do is decrement T by 1. So T moves to this 1 over here. And now basically that means that this 5 is removed from here. And now this is my T. But in an array, mostly when you have decremented T and brought the T to 1, technically there is no way you can actually erase 5. 5 is still there. But it's no longer in consideration for us, because after that, if we again have to do a push, all we are doing is, like, if we have to do a push 9, we'll simply increment T and just overwrite whatever was in there. 5 was there, you can just overwrite it with 9, because as far as we are concerned, that 5 was never there. So the moment we have popped something, T moved to 1, you can technically simply just erase 5, indicating that 5 is no longer there. And then you have pushed 9, so 9 is actually going over to that location over there. And at any point, so right now, if I have pushed 9, this is at the index 2. The size is given by T plus 1, because this is a 0 indexed array. So if I want to call the size, then mostly I'll just do T plus 1. T is equal to 2 right now. So 3 is the size example. So if you have these, just a second here. So if these are the series of commands, so can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. These are the series of commands that you have to do, but this time it's a fixed array based stack. And the capacity is going to be given to you. So for example, the capacity is 6. So first of all, we'll draw the array that should have a capacity 6. It will go from 0 to 5. Now let's see what happens with these. So first, at the very beginning, T is going to be initialized. So my T is over here, -1. This is the T. So now I want to push 7. In the push, first T is incremented. So t is incremented by 1, goes to 0, and at that point, 7 is put. Then again for 9, t is incremented, and at that point, 9 is placed. Again, push 14, t is incremented, and at that location, 14 is placed. So those three pushes in sequence are going to result in this particular stack right now. Now, when a pop is called after this, so now a pop is called. The pop will actually just decrement t. So t will actually just be decremented by 1 and put over here. So for all practical purposes, my stack is only this one right now. But 14 is still there. I mean, there's no way we can actually erase it in the memory. It's still there, but we will never have it back into consideration because we are only concerned with the top and everything that is below it over here. So just to make the drawing better and to keep our understanding better, we can actually even, erase it to indicate that 14 is gone. It has been removed. So now you call push again. Push does what? Push actually increments t first and then puts the element at that location. And then again, a pop is called, which would just decrement t again. And we can actually just erase that element, indicating that it has been removed. Again, a 19 is pushed. That would move increment t by 1 and put 19 over there. And then finally, a 2 is pushed, which would increment again t by 1 and put 2 over here. So following this sequence of commands, this is actually the resulting stack with the answer. So when you will see a question like this in the homework or in the exam, then this is basically the final answer that is expected. You could have the intermediate diagrams as well, or you also could not have them. So you can have them on the scratch paper, but when the time comes to submit something, you can just submit the final answer. If you want to submit the intermediate diagrams, that's fine. But this needs to be there. This is the final answer. And only this one also suffices. And you should have the correct pointer. So the correct index, the T should also be placed at the correct index, indicating that this is the T where it should be at 3, resulting after all of these commands. So is this clear? Any questions at all? Okay, so I can actually, it's also in the picture over here that's posted on Titanium over here, the stack example. This one is the same, the commands that we were just working on, and this is the resulting stack that you will get in the form of a fixed array-based stack, following all those operations like we did. So just for reference later on, if you would like to practice this yourself and see that you do get this correct answer. Now, for the homework that you have, the homework 6, you have the stack question based on the stack, where you have a series of commands is given, and then you have to draw the sketch of a singly linked list based stack following all these steps. So that is why I tell you to refer that this is a different sequence, but then following any sequence, you should be able to get the relevant stack. So a singly linked based stack should look similar to this. And then you also have to draw a sketch of an array-based stack with capacity 6 is given. So would be similar to this. But of course, the operations are different in the example and in the question. But you do have an idea now what to sort of these answers would look like. So that's the question number 1. And then now we will begin queues. So do you have any question at all? Okay, so let's begin queues then. The queue is, I would not say it's a direct opposite to a stack, but it's some part of it is a little bit opposite to the stack. We will see in just a bit what exactly a queue is. It's easier to sort of understand a queue because a queue, we have seen this in various real life situations. When we are standing in a line for a bus or in a grocery checkout lane or basically in a queue in a bank or anywhere, mostly, you see a queue of people, right? Waiting in line for their turn to come. So, and the important part is like this person came in first. So this person will get the first chance to do whatever they are waiting for. So he was the first in the queue. So he's the first one out of the queue. So the queue is actually a first in, first out fundamental. Whereas if you remember, the stacks were the last in, first out, a LIFO. So we should always contrast the queues and the stacks like this, where a stack is a last in, first out, whereas a queue is a first in, first out. So in a stack, you were always dealing with the top. So everything was happening at the top of the stack. Either you were pushing something or you were removing something, then updating the top. In the queue, what happens is you always push something at the rear of the queue. It's called, we will see, it's like the front and the rear, two concepts in a queue. You push something always at the rear of the queue. You remove something always from the front of the queue. The operations are very, very similarly called, but they are just implemented differently. You have a push, pop, empty size, but then you have a new operation that is equivalent to the top, which is the front. In the top, you were able to return the item that was on the top of the stack. If you want to return the item that's on the front of the queue, you just call the front. So, but you have to remember that push works differently. It will insert an item at the rear of the queue. A pop will remove an item at the front of the queue. So if we look at this example that is posted over here, the queue example, these are a series of commands. What happens over here is you push 7, so 7 is the first number in the line. Then comes push 9. So 9 will always will get back in line after 7. That's how basically queues work. Then comes 14. So 14 will be the third one in line. And now you pop. So mostly you remove the first element from the line. Then comes push 1. So 1 will go over here. Then pop. The first element is removed. Then push 19 again at the rear of the queue. And then push 2 again at the rear of the queue. So this is what is demonstrated over here. So at the end, you will just have 14, 1, 19, 2 in the queue. And this is your front, this is your rear. So mostly what in the behind the scenes, what is happening is like if you're implementing this queue based on a singly linked list, when you push 7, a node was created. And both head and tail pointed here. Then you pushed 9. push 9 is equivalent to an append. If you remember, an append always puts an element at the back of the list. So at the behind the last element of the list. So a push 9, if an SLL is equivalent to an append, so 9 goes here, then you will update the tail. Then push 14 again, append. Now comes the time of pop. Pop is equivalent to remove front, which means you will remove the firstmost element, that is 7 in this case. So you'll remove that and you will update the head. So the head will start pointing to this element over here. Then push 1 is again equivalent to an append. So you append 1 over here, you update the tail. Then pop again removes the first element and you update the head. And push 19 and push 2 will just append 2 elements at the back. And you will be updating the head, sorry, the tail. So just wanted to let you know that if we are really following the SLL operations, then relevant operations for push is an append and relevant operation for an pop is a remove front. And you're updating your tail and head respectively. That is when you're implementing it, when you're coding it. But when you're drawing something, like in the question in the homework, when you're drawing an SLL-based stack, always visualize it like a regular SLL-based queue, sorry. Visualize it like a regular queue of any line, any queue of numbers. Just start with trying to push always like this, 7, 9, 14. And when you want to pop something, remove from the front, push something, add at the back, again pop, and finally this. First, you should just do this by just the real life understanding of a queue. And then you can, this is sort of a hack. So you can just then make them into these nodes over here. And this becomes a single linked list based queue over here. And then the first element is always the head. The last is the tail. Technically, this is what the code for the SLL is doing anyway. But drawing is like this is actually a lot more easier instead of like updating head and tail at each position, even though that is what is happening. But since we understand that, we can just skip over those steps. So is this does this make sense? So the implementation of the queue is, again, we can always use the container that is available in the standard library, the queue container. And you have the data structure. We can also write our own code for it, which is available on the GitHub. In the standard library, we can actually go here and you can go to the c++.com and these are the operations for the queue. So you can see the pop, the push, the empty, the size, the front, and also there's a back. So that means that you can also query the element at the back of the list. And if you want to read more about these functions, you can always look at the very small examples that are posted. They are really good examples. And then you can also, there's a small example that I posted here that you can download and try to run it. So we want to run it so we can actually open up a new project. So we can just delete the default source file that comes with any new project. So we can just delete that. And now you can copy this example from Titanium and bring this over here. And you can see that we are including the queue. And then I'm just using the namespace std. So I'm saying my queue is actually containing integers. And I just call my object is just a queue. And now I'm going to, this is a different set of operations. So let's see what queue is going to be created based on this. So I'm going to do a push 5. So 5, then push 3, push 7. So far, the queue looks like this. Now I'm calling a pop, then another pop, then a push 1 and a push 2, then a pop, and finally a push 8. My resulting queue has 1, 2, and 8. I can actually run a program to see if exactly at the end of those series of operations, this in fact is my queue. One thing that I want to always tell you is like in a stack, you can never iterate over the elements in a stack. A stack just, always looks at the top. So whatever elements are over here are here, but at any given point of time, you can only access something is on the top. If you do want to access something over here, you technically have to just remove all the elements one by one from the top until you reach that location, and then you can query that. At no point in time, even if you have an array-based stack, at no point in time, you can actually, if this is the top and you can actually go over here. So this is index 0, 1, 2, and 3. Even though this is an array, you cannot ever access AR1. You're not allowed to in a stack. You can only access AR3 because this is the top. If you do want to access AR1, you have to delete the top 2 elements, and then reach AR1 because at that point, 1 will be the top. So you can never iterate over a stack. You can also never access any element except the top. The same goes for queue. So if you want to give the impression of iterating, so in the queue 1, 2, 8, or even when we are trying to printing this queue over here just to see if this queue is the correct queue, then you have to query the element or return the element at the front. But before going to the next element, you have to pop 1. Only then you can go to 2. When you want to go to 8, you have to pop 2. Only then you can go to 8. So at the end of all of that, you end up with an empty queue. The same way with the stack. The only way you can go to the next element is actually have to just empty that position, and then only you can go over to the next element. So queue mostly can only be accessed either just at the front element, either just at the back element. That's all. But even with the back element, you're not allowed to go in the reverse direction. So in the front, you can go from left to right. by trying to pop something in the back, you cannot start popping from the back. You can only access this back element and add something at the back. Beyond that, you cannot start going towards the left in a queue from the back. So now let's see, we expect 1 to 8 as the result of these commands. So if we want to print this, so we have a 1 to 8 at the end, which is the correct queue at the end of all of these commands. But now after that, over here, if I want to do something again with the queue, that queue is empty. At this point, after this loop, the queue is empty. So is this clear? Now, so we have seen how we can represent a singly linked list based queue. In the same way as a stack, we can also have a fixed array based stack, but this array is basically called a different name over here, which is actually, a different sort of, which is called a circular array. And we will see what exactly a circular array is. And before that, let's go into the real world applications of the queues. The real world application of the queues are just like, how you have seen anyone waiting in a line for something. So you have the waiting lists. If you want to process the waiting list for anything, it's like, you can use a queue data structure for that. And then if, for example, in an office or in a lab, something you have, say, for example, 10 computers and 2 printers. So printer becomes a shared resource among 10 computers. And if somebody wants to fire a print to the printer, and then, in a sequence, different computers fire the prints, they just have to wait in line, and they will be serviced according to the time they fired the printouts on. So they will just be put in a queue for the printer. And then there is the multi-programming sort of idea. Multi-programming is what we have basically on our computers all the time. Multi-programming is right now over here. So you can see that, the PowerPoint is working. So it's a different program. The Zoom is working. The Google Chrome is working. All of these are different programs. So right now we are multi-programming. But what does that mean in the term of a queue? It means that you may have heard, when you look at the specifications of your computer, you have heard something about the chips of the CPU. So Intel chips, you have a quad core or a duo core processor. What that means is there are some cores that are available on the chip. To put it simply, for example, one chip has maybe a duo core or something. That would just be indicating that it has 2 cores. And that would just, without going into too much detail, basically that makes available more than 1 CPU. So right now, for example, in a quad core computer, technically, you could have 8 CPUs that are all in your computer at this time. So thinking that, if you had just a uniprocessor system, just 1 CPU, and you have 3 programs running, a Zoom, a PowerPoint, how can all of them be running in the same CPU? They will technically have to get in line, So mostly the Zoom is in the CPU for maybe 1 second, and then comes Google Chrome, and then comes something else. And then the CPU keeps getting switched among all of those processes. But technically, there's still only 1 program can be in the CPU at a given time. So all the others have to be in the queue. But we have a lot more processes that are always running at the back end. So technically, the ones that are not active but still running behind. So that means that we do have more CPUs to be able to run all of those processes, maybe concurrently. But even then, even if you have 8 processors, you still have, like, for 1 processor, maybe even 4 or 8 processes that are waiting in line to get the CPU. again, the CPU wants to be fair to all of them, so it will just put them in a queue and just go one by one, trying to give them some time in the CPU for them to run. So a queue is actually the sort of like the implementation that is actually used by the operating system to service those processes. Then a queue can actually be a component of other data structures. And then a queue can also be used as a data structure for many algorithms. Now, there are many, many thousands of algorithms, like some examples being the sorting algorithms, like the shortest path algorithms, and many, many more. Some algorithms really want the data to be working in a queue. So they want the first in, first out sort of an idea. So in there, you have a very, very good usage of a queue data structure. So let's look at another example for the CPU example I was talking about. The CPU, given the number of processors that you have in the computer, even if you have 8 CPUs, it will always be lesser in as compared to the number of processors. So it is always a shared device that would be used among various processors. So for example, this one is process number 1, 2. When the processes are going to be given the time in the CPU, it's called scheduling those processes in the CPU. And then various algorithms are used for that. One of the algorithms is called round robin scheduler, which is actually a very fair algorithm, which means that a time will be set, for example, 5 seconds or 5 microseconds. That means that each process is only going to get, for example, 5 microseconds, not more than that. So the first process came in over here, so it will be removed from the queue. It will be given 5 microseconds in the CPU. Then it will be removed. So it will be actually removed from the CPU and set to actually get back in line so it can get its turn again. That way, the process number 1 has not got the CPU forever, and other processes which are waiting in line also get their time. So it's a very fair scheduler. So if the process number 2 needs 20 microseconds, it will first be removed, only get to 5 microseconds, and for the remaining 15, it will actually be again pushed back into the queue at the end. So everyone is getting a fair chance in the CPU. You can also envision it something like this over here. So for example, this is a grocery checkout line. This is person 1, 2, and so on. And this one is a very fair cashier. The cashier is very fair in the sense that the cashier says that I'm only going to check out 5 items. So this person has 4 items. This one has 2. But this person has 50 items. And this one only has 1. So the person in 4th line will actually be blocked by the person having 50 items, have to wait for a very long time. But because this round robin scheduler sort of like cashier, who is very fair, says I'm only going to give you, allow you to check out only 5 items. So when this person 1 is the first one to check out, they check out 4 items, that's all. Okay, they go away. Then person number 2 only checks out 2 items, they go away too. But 50, the person with 50 is removed from the line, is able to check out 5, but still have 45 more items to pay for. They have to actually get back in line with those 45 items, and then this person with the 1 gets a chance. So it's basically a fair sort of a scheduling system where everyone has equal time, and this particular process/person is not blocked forever behind a process/person who needs a lot more time with the shared service. So a queue is actually the best way to proceed in such a scenario. So does this make sense? Any questions? can actually now go on to the circular array-based queue implementation, where we will so in a stack, you can see that we had just one variable, the t, but in here we will have two variables, an f and an r. So let me then, and the operations push and pop are the ones that we need to see what will happen with them. For the push, every time the R is always positioned at the correct place where you want to put the item at. So you put the item at the location R, and then you increment R is equal to R plus 1 to move the R to the next location. And we will see why the mod capacity is there. And then finally, for the pop, we simply move the front to the next location, indicating that item at the front was removed and the front just moved to the next location. So that is what f is equal to f plus 1 does. But let me then try to draw this over here. So if supposing this is the capacity of a fixed array based queue, the capacity is 4. And then before anything, at the very beginning, the front and the rear are always put at the index 0. What happens then is, supposing I want to push an element over here, push 7. Push 7 will put the element at this location where R is, and after that it will do R is equal to R plus 1. Move the R to the next location. Then a series of push will do the same. Put the element here, move R next. Put the element here, move R next. Now supposing a pop is called, a pop simply does f is equal to f plus 1, where f just moves here, technically indicating that this element has been removed. So you can simply remove that element to indicate that that element has gone. Now you can again call another pop that would again remove this element, and front will actually now go over here. But now after that, for example, you have to call a push 6. Push 6 will do what? Put 6 over here and want to move R is equal to R plus 1. There's no space over here. You cannot go over here because the capacity is 4. So R is equal to R plus 1 cannot go over here. But because two pops happen, you still have two places that are empty in this queue, right? So we have to take advantage of the empty spaces. So we should be able to circle back. This R should be able to circle back and be able to move the next location for the R to be 0. That's why it's called a circular array. So that's why every time when we do R is equal to R plus 1, we do a mod capacity. The mod capacity only works, only has any effect really when R or F are always at the end of this one, the last index. Because in this case, when I did a push 6, I would put 6 over there. Then I will do R is equal to, my R is 3 plus 1 mod capacity. Capacity is 4. 3 plus 1 is 4, so this is 4 mod 4. which is 0. A modulus operator, what it does is divides the first element by the second element, and the remainder is the result of the modulus. So when you divide 4 by 4, you get 1. The remainder is 0. 4 mod 4 is 0. The remainder is the result of the mod operation. So 0. And that is why R moves here. To be able for the R to circle back, we always have this R is equal to R plus 1 mod capacity. For any other location, when you are anywhere in here, R is equal to R plus 1 mod capacity would not have any effect. It will technically always just work like R is equal to R plus 1. So for example, if we have push 5 here, you will put 5, and then you will do R is equal to R plus 1, which is 0 plus 1 mod 4, which is 1 mod 4. 1 mod 4 is just 1, because 1 divided by 4 is 0 and the remainder is 1. So it's just equal to R is equal to R plus 1. It's similar to R is equal to R plus 1. The mod 4 only has the effect at this particular point, the last index. So you will still move R to that one location over here. In the same way, if your pop is called, you can keep moving front. So the front will, this one again will be removed, and then front will move here. But again, now if you call another pop after that, for the F also to be able to circle back, because if you want to call pop here, this one will be removed, and the front should come back here. So that's why you have a F is equal to F plus 1 mod capacity. And you can just envision it like this. So instead of that, a straight line array, you have a circular array, where if this was your 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 slots you have. So you can just keep circling around the queue. You can keep putting in elements. And think of the people actually making like a circular queue instead of a straight line queue. So as people are getting removed from the queue, so newer people are coming in, as long as you have a space, you can keep going around the queue. So does this make sense?
So the formula to get R is always going to be R plus 1 mod capacity, right? Or
for both, for the R also and for the F also. It's always R plus 1. R is always R plus 1 mod capacity, and F is always F plus 1 mod capacity when you are moving them one ahead. Only thing is when you are in the middle anywhere, R is equal to R plus 1 mod capacities for all other indexes except the very last one. R is equal to R plus 1 mod capacity is exactly the same as R is equal to R plus 1.
Thank you.
Because they will always be smaller than the capacity. So irrespective of the capacity, so even if we have even if the capacity is 8, as long as we are going from 0 to 6, even when R was 0, R is equal, this is the formula. When the R is 0, you have 0 plus 1 mod 8, which is 1, which is very similar to just 0 plus 1, which is 1, right? In the same way, for if you were at 6 mostly, if you are at 6, you have just 6 plus 1 mod 8, which is 7 mod 8, which is still 7. So which is the same thing as 6 plus 1. 7 mod 8 because for every number that's less than the capacity, r plus 1 mod 8 and r plus 1 is going to be exactly the same. The only change happens at that location over here at 7. When you have 7 plus 1 mod 8, which will be 8 mod 8, then the result is 0. So then it's not 8 like other cases, because then mod 8 is actually going to bring you back to 0 over here. Right? So let's look at an example to see what we are going to get. For another queue here. For these series of commands, if it's given that the capacity is 5, let's see what we will get for our final queue. So from the very beginning, we'll begin at R and F will begin at 0. And an empty queue, we begin here. Then for push 7, when push 7 happens, 7 is placed over here where R is. And then after that, it's again in the part of the push only, R has to move plus 1 mod capacity, which will actually just move R plus 1. Then 9 is placed over here and R is moved plus 1. Then 14 is placed over here, R is moved here. So at the end of the first 3 push commands, this is what the queue looks like. So front is pointing at the location 0 and R is pointing at the next available space where the next item can go in if a push were called. But now you're calling a pop. A pop simply does F is equal to F plus 1 mod capacity. That means that F will just go to F plus 1 over here, technically indicating that this element is gone. And you can just erase this element. Now comes again a push 1. 1 will just be put over here and R will actually go over here. Then again comes a pop. Pop just moves front 1 position, indicating that this element is gone. So you can just erase it. Now you do a push 19. So you do a push 19. 19 will be placed over here and R is equal to R plus 1 mod capacity, because this is at this position, so it will be um, 4 plus 1. This is 5. Capacity is 5. So mod capacity, that's 5. So 5 mod 5 is 0. So this will move R to 0. Then finally you push 2. So 2 will be placed over here and then R is moved over here. So at the end of all of these commands, this is the resulting queue. So does this make sense? Is this clear or any questions? I can give you another example for you to work on. Okay, so what is the result? Then can you try to work on this? And see what you get. The capacity is given to be 4. And this is the front and this is the rear to begin with. Is anyone done with the answer? F and R end with at the location 2
Yes.
for everyone? Is the queue empty? What is it? So how about other people? What are you getting? let's see here. So we have a push 3. A push 3 will put the item here and move R to the next location that is here, right? Then push 11 does the same thing, puts 11 over here and moves R one location to the right. Then push 1 puts the item here and moves R one location to the right. So far, is this clear? So far, that's what happened with the 3 pushes. Now comes a pop. Pop will actually move F to F plus 1. So F moves here. And technically, this element is removed. Then comes another pop and moves F is equal to F plus 1 mod capacity. That would just be F plus 1. And then this element is removed. So after this is what the queue looks like after step 5. Then at step 6, you are pushing 5. So put 5 over here and R is moved to R plus 1 mod capacity, which will move R to 0. Then pop is called. So pop will move the front from here to here. Then again, a pop is called, and this will move the front from here to here. After that, a push is called, where 12 is pushed over here and R is moved here. And then a pop is called, where F is moved plus 1 and this one is removed. So at the end, basically, you have an empty queue with both F and R at location 1. So do you understand? Does everyone understand how we got here? Okay. So now what is the scenario is that we have actually completed the material that is for the midterm. And normally we just have like one review session, but if we are finished early, we can also devote the next class that is this week also for the review. So what we have to do for the next 2 classes, because the midterm is on next Thursday, which is March 25. Before that, we have 2 classes. We can devote both of those 2 classes for the review. And what I do in the review is always, I encourage all of you to bring any questions that you have on the material we have covered so far. And I can help you solve some of those questions and answer those questions. The exam is always going to be very much based on, very similar to the questions you see on the homework. So not on the projects, very similar to the question that you see on the homework. So like I said, I can go over in detail again on Thursday on the pattern of questions. But again, you will have sketching questions. So you have like 4 sketching questions expected. So you will be sketching 1 SLL, 1 DLL, 1 stack, and 1 queue. And you have seen those sketching questions in homework 4 and also now in homework 6. So homework 6, you are sketching the queue and stack. each of them based on an SLL and arrays. For the Q, you have a circular array based Q, like the ones we just saw. The capacity is going to be given to you. And you have some short answer kind of question, that's something similar that we talked about today for the round robin scheduler. So again, the exams are going to be very similar to the kind of questions you have seen in the homework. And so please bring your questions on Thursday and also next Tuesday for any of the things we studied up till now. And another thing I want to say is, yes, so there are a few concerns as the vaccine is being rolled out. I'm not sure how many people have had the chance to get it, but I'm hearing from a few students, I'm not sure, but I think a few students who did go and get it are, I think the second dose apparently has some effects where, I mean, people tend to get a little bit, I think some issues are there based on the second dose. So what I'm trying to bringing that up over here is that I'm making this sort of like an accommodation for the midterm. This is only for the midterm, but not the final. Because I don't know, I mean, like, you know, when people are doing what, and I mean, in respect to the vaccine, and also there are some internet connectivity issues and all those things keep happening. So I'm just making this accommodation for the midterm that instead of the synchronous midterm, as we have planned earlier, I'll make this asynchronous midterm exam. What that means is the exam is going to be open for 24 hours. So that would be, again, only on Thursday. So that is on the March 25. You can choose the time when you want to take the exam. So you're not tied with the class time. If you feel more comfortable taking the exam at any other time, except at 5:50, you can just log in to the exam and take it at that time. So for example, if you're more comfortable during nighttime at 9, for example, or maybe, you know, earlier in the afternoon or early morning, you can take the exam at that time. So it's sort of, you don't have to be logged in on Zoom when you're taking it. So you're just taking it on your own. The exam is going to be available for 24 hours. But when you're actually attempting the exam, you only have 90 minutes to take it. So for example, if you choose to start the exam at 10 a.m. in the morning, you only have till 11:30 to finish that exam because you started at 10. But the time you choose to start is really up to you among those 24 hours. Only thing is the earliest you want to start is 10:30 p.m. in the night if you want to take the advantage of full 1.5 hours, because if you begin at 11:30 in the night, you only have half an hour until the exam will close. So is there something that you like and you will be okay with?
Yes. If you had some problems with internet or something like that, and like we couldn't attempt the quiz correctly, we should just email you as soon as possible to fix that problem.
Well, here's the thing. If you think that you may have some questions, so I will not be able to answer the emails all day because I'm not sure who is going to be taking the exam. Here's the thing. If you anticipate that you may need some help with the question because you want to sort of like maybe you didn't understand what the question was wanting you to do, I'm going to be available only during the class time, like I'm available over here. And if you choose to, you actually have a choice to take the exam at that time. So then you can come in during the regular time at 5:30 or a little bit more before that, 5:30 till 7. And then I can actually answer, you can take the exam, you know, while logged into the Zoom, and you can ask the questions at that time. If you anticipate that you may need any help understanding the question, if you feel that you can just understand them on your own, then take it on your own time. but I will be able to answer the questions during the Zoom chat if you choose to take it during the exam time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So at any other time, so even if you're taking in the exam time, you're not supposed to log into the Zoom. You want to log into the Zoom if you want to ask me any question. That's all. So basically, this is a completely open book exam, open slides. You have access to Titanium, you have access. But then again, I'm just trusting you that you are just going to be very honest and working completely individually. So no collaboration. And individually, you are just like free to refer to any book or anything on Titanium slides, homework solutions whatsoever. So does that make sense? Is it all clear then how the exam is going to be administered? Now, this is a one-time thing because, we don't know how things are changing as things are changing, but can't speak about the final yet. But assuming as things they are right now, final will just be the regular synchronous logging into the Zoom, the regular way exams are. But I'm just making this exception for the midterm. Okay, so you have the homework 6 that is now already available for you, and this is based on what we have seen for stacks and queues. It's going to be due on Monday, March 22nd, 11:59 p.m. And the reason is that, we want to at least have the Tuesday, in case you have any questions on this homework that you can ask me during Tuesday's review session. So we need to get done before this time so I can actually give you the solutions before we meet on Tuesday. So, all right, then any questions at all? So then again, let's meet on Thursday and please bring your questions, any questions that you have. And then let's meet on Thursday, okay? All right, then, bye everyone.
Thank you.